I mean, we kind of covered this, but maybe a different way. I mean, if there's one thing you could tell the world, I mean, what would it be?
I don't know. I don't think I would tell the world anything. Yeah, I don't think I would. Yeah, if it was something, it would probably be along the lines of like, what I'm interested in photography is like what the world has to tell me. A bit cheesy, but I'm all right with that. Yeah, like yeah. What do you got for me, world?
That's great. We'll start another podcast, Solomon. That'll be what it's called. That feels like the perfect answer, considering what I've learned about how you approach your life and your craft. It's a lot of humility for a young man. My Viewfinder is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. The Alberta Podcast Network is a program to support Albertan podcasts by connecting us with local businesses and initiatives to keep our stories and our interests at the fore. If you're interested in finding more Albertan podcast content in a wide range of topics, check out their website, albertapodcastnetwork.com, or you can connect with them over social media. They are at Alberta Podnet on both Instagram and Twitter. Our sponsored message today is from Calgary Foundation, proudly supporting community needs for 65 years. Empathy, kindness, generosity. We are united in our desire to give, to inspire hope, and transform the lives of people who are struggling in turbulent times. And the Calgary Foundation is here to help. From mental health programs to environmental causes, the Community Knowledge Center website features profiles of charitable organizations, all searchable by area of interest. Be inspired by compelling stories. Be informed of innovative work. Be responsive to the needs. To connect to hundreds of outstanding charitable organizations serving our community, visit ckc.calgaryfoundation.org. To learn more about the Calgary Foundation, visit calgaryfoundation.org. In this, the second half of my talk with Solomon, I learned more about his upbringing. Growing up on a reserve in poverty fostered something more than just a survival mentality. Often we can believe that money creates money, but life doesn't always work like that. Some people who come from the so-called upper class actually don't put anything together. And we'll see here with Solomon, some people who come from a place without some handouts can create incredibly meaningful work. So we'll start this part of the conversation with my question to Solomon on how he was able to build the discipline required to become such a great photographer. If you can remember, how did it start and what was it like to get to the point where you could do it every day? Because, I'm training to be essentially like more of a long distance runner. And like when COVID started, I could hardly spend 10 minutes doing continuous exercise without wanting to give up or being upset at myself. It's taken me more than a year to where I'm at. Do you remember what it was like at the beginning where you told yourself that you were going to do, I mean, maybe it wasn't every day, but that you needed to do something regularly and coming to where you are now? Is there any advice to folks that ought to do this?
I don't think you ought to do anything, but a funny thing of where this started was because I grew up in a rural area and we had no money. It's like I used to go, when I was like a little kid, I used to go around to different houses and collect cans, like beer cans and like pop cans, like kilometers I would walk when I was like a little kid, when I was like 10, and carry these garbage bags and like collect all these cans because like people like would throw cans everywhere. There's like lots of people who are alcoholics and things around my neighborhood, which is like vague because it's like in the woods. I would just go to these people's houses. I knew them and just take their cans. I'd get my mom to drive me to the bottle depot and cash out these cans for money. And I would use that money to buy video games or like whatever I wanted. Because my parents could not afford that stuff. I'd go to the pawn shop and like buy like whatever used game. And that's like kind of funny, like where this kind of dedication started. Because like I knew like if I needed to do something to like get whatever I wanted. And at that time I wanted video games. And the analog process started from in university. Like I was broke. I lucked out and got some scholarships, which didn't pay for all of my university. But I was like in this school, I didn't have I had like whatever camera that I afforded from working in high school, like my whatever part-time job I had in high school. I was working at a grocery store and a food bank. but I saved up to buy like a Canon T3i or whatever. And then I was at this university and they told me I needed all this professional gear if I wanted to be a photographer. And I was like, well, I can't afford that, but I went to like a thrift store and I bought a $17 camera, and that's what I shot most of my school projects on, was that. I also did buy a 5D, like an original classic, for like a couple $100 at that time. I was really broke, so I had to like be resourceful of what to do, and I couldn't afford these crazy cameras, so I just I'm just gonna use analog because like I have this camera, this like Konica C35 or whatever, and I decided to start then to learn the analog process, like dedicate myself to it. And it was because like I couldn't afford like whatever lenses or anything, so I was like, I'm just gonna use this. I hope that answered your question. I think it comes from like lack of resources.
It sounds like you're pretty industrious by nature. I mean, when I was 10, I did not try to buy my own gear. And we definitely come from different environments. I mean, even as a second generation Korean, my parents were, like, my dad was an architect, my mom was a teacher. You know, they were struggling when they first came to Canada, but by the end, they were trying to get into the sort of middle class. And so I grew up spoiled. I was angry about it, miserable even, but that's my psychology. And like I said, I think by nature, I am not disciplined. I've been talking about alcoholics. I'm 5 years now without booze, but that's a lot of work to get away from that life for me. And I think that, it's interesting. Maybe it's unfair to ask you, because I wonder if it's not a conscious thing. You do talk about how it comes out of necessity, but there are a lot of folks either that have necessity or like me that can't be that disciplined about making their own way. And even kind of that rebellious attitude where your teacher's like, well, you need this fucking whatever megapixel or high-end film camera and studio lights, and you're like, fuck it, I'm doing it with a $17 used camera. I love it. It's got a lot of self-confidence, I think, in that. It's interesting. I mean, I don't know, what were you thinking when you are told by your administration you need some minimum something, and you went and got a used camera? Were you confident that you could pass and impress people, or it was just a matter of this is the best that I can do, and we'll see where the chips lay?
Yeah, that's kind of, I was not concerned about what they were going to say or anything. Like, I also bought a scanner for like $70. So it's like a bit more than $17. Like I bought like a Epson V550 or something. I don't know. Something, flatbed scanner. And I just used that, and you get D76, that's like $10. You get a bulk roll of film, that's $100, and then you just like use that for like whenever it runs out. And like you get some fixture, and like that's all you need. And a tank, obviously, but you can find things for like free. And I've gotten I used a lot of random garbage film that people gave me because I told them I was into film. And a lot of my projects are on garbage film that people threw away. It was there, so I used it and it was fine. Yeah, so not too concerned about like what people are thinking. Just trying to do the same with whatever I have, whatever it is I'm trying to do, which I don't know.
So my follow-up then is, where are you at now? I mean, you're working, you're more established in the field, you've published some work. Do you feel like that sense of necessity is fading and it's become something else? Or is there something that still compels you to make the most out of the least amount of thrills, as a photographer specifically, but in life? It sounds like, you're very resourceful. How would you describe yourself right now and your process? Is it growing a little bit? Is it expanding, or are we still using a $17 used camera?
We're not using that camera anymore. I am using most of my work's on a point and shoot. I also do have a Leica, so I can't really complain here. But I am still trying to make the most out of like whatever I have. Last year, I went and just bought a Leica because I was annoyed at these. Like, I was still using thrift store cameras up until last year. And I was annoyed, like I was just mad because like I ruined 15 or 20 rolls of film. Basically this whole last summer, like I was like shooting some stuff out in Morley, and I ruined a lot of it because I was using this thrift store camera. Like which is like part of the process. But I was just like, and then right now I'm like kind of done with that. So I just like was like, I can't do this anymore. I just have to get something reliable. So I finally bought a reliable camera that works for my needs. But as far as like art goes and like photography goes, I think I'm at a place where it's like everything's like set up in a way that I can just keep working, like working in a way that I don't have to worry about much as far as like equipment goes. But I'm also shifting my interest to many different forms of art mediums, like music, and like music has been a big focus, and like films, obviously, filmmaker second to photographer, I think. Films and music, and trying to get a video game published, that's a whole other thing. Just like what, like, I don't know, trying to like branch out into like projects that like bigger projects that can hire some of the folks that I grew up with, because they're all talented. Like I grew up with like a lot of talented artists, and they're not as resourceful as me, and I'm trying to trade this skill that I have, that I've cultivated and learned how to do, and give that to like some of the community members I grew up with, and in a way that, like, I don't know, in my own way, I guess, like with like grant writing and what have you, just trying to spread that financial stability, or like whatever I've learned over the years. That's kind of what I'm mostly focused on, I guess.
I mean, I definitely need to come back and ask you what your video game is about. But what sticks out is, you brought up how your mom is connected to 7 families, and you have yourself this incredible intuition to be community driven. Is that something cultural? Is it something specific to you and your family? I mean, again, when I was 25, I didn't give a fuck about anybody. I actually probably didn't really care about myself enough. But you're working, you're building this thing, and you're trying to send energy back. It's fascinating. I think it's cool, but is it something that's always been a part of your intentional makeup, or is it something now that you find yourself getting more balanced than you're thinking about folks you grew up with?
Yeah, I think it's something with, I guess, age, and like trying to give back to the people that have helped me and how they've done things, and trying to, in my slightly older self way of like the resources that I have available to me. Like, I don't know, like I had a rough time like getting out of the reserve, and like even living and going to school, like, it was like going to school out here. It's pretty like, I had a really dicey time like getting by, which is fine, like whatever, I'm alive now. But yeah, I just don't want like I don't know, like a lot of the family members that I grew up with and like community members, like I just don't want them to go through that, because that sucked. Like I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but
I can't stop swearing. Yeah.
Yeah, that really sucked, and like I just don't want people to like go through that. That's like awful, and especially like with like art centers, and especially some of the ones in Calgary, they don't really like I was treated poorly, and I don't want to name names, and I don't want to out people because it's not my style. I'm not a cop. I'm not trying to like whatever, But like I had some rough times in Calgary and with Calgary arts organizations where they made me do a lot of like emotional and like actual work, and like paid me really garbage. But I'm trying to like, that's like one aspect that I'm trying to like get rid of, so that like, especially with like nonprofits, like I just don't want any of my cousins to like maybe they do want to work with those people, or like in like the nonprofit sector and like the arts sector. But I just want to show them that we can just do that. We can skip the middleman and just do it ourselves. Because a lot of those things are really they don't work well for like, I'm not trying to speak for all Indigenous people, but they didn't work well for me. And they're sure as hell not going to work well for some of my cousins that like the ones that like they came to me and they asked me like they're interested in making video games. And I'm like, okay, maybe I can try to figure out how to do that. And like how to get a grant for that. Like how can we pay everybody? How can we get like jobs? Like, and how can we like basically just get money so that they can live and not be like, I don't know, they're all working like tourism in Banff. A lot of my cousins, they like housekeepers and cleaners and servers and cooks in a lot of the hotels in and around Banff and Canmore. Just how to stop people from working there. Like, not that it is a bit of exploitative, but I mean, that's just like any industry. And that also is like out of necessity of just like, I don't want people to like, I don't know, I just want my community to do well. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking about.
Like, yeah, without getting necessarily into specifically what happened to you per se, I mean, what are the biggest difficulties for an artist to work through all of these, I don't know, not just stereotypes, but these barriers? I mean, it sounds like you've had a very, rough a difficult time getting to where you're at? Even maybe you're here because you're such a resourceful person by nature, but are there very simple barriers to entry that, that are not monolithic? What's the word I'm looking for? That are institutionalized? Like what's the main issue? Because there are so many talented people, even in Calgary, there are of any ilk, gender, or identification. There is a lot of creative talent, I'm sure everywhere. But I am also surprised how often they feel they've got to leave or do something they don't want to do to just get a voice out. Because there are these invisible barriers, sometimes visible, but maybe what's the most difficult lesson that you had to learn, and what is it that you think will inspire your cousins and people outside of your community to be represented and do it sort of your own way as much as possible while we still fit into a system where, money comes from certain groups of people. Is there a single thing? What's an inspiring idea that you try to get your cousins to latch onto so they don't, fall into the same traps?
I don't know. Like one big lesson that I learned is like, it seems cliche, but like anyone can do anything. If it was like made by humans and like you can just do it, you can probably try and ask for that grant. You can probably try and apply for that job or whatever. You might get rejected, but like maybe you won't. I don't know. It's like a weird thing. And I guess especially with arts organizations, it just matters like the language you use because it's very bureaucratic. And if you just like word it in a nice way, you can change people's minds. And it's like crazy how like if you just say things like, I don't know, just like having somebody there to, like I have like a lot of people that help me like write grants and like try to word my vision in a better way than how I can say it, articulate it to like arts organizations, the government, Canada Council, and like what have you. Yeah, I don't know. And like your project will probably be great. I don't know. And this money is going to go somewhere to someone anyway, like, or it might get fizzled out into the ether of bureaucracy. Like a lot of money gets lost in bureaucracy, obviously. Like it's obvious and it's real. Like if a grant or body like has this pot of money that's sitting there for like people to get, like not everyone's going to apply for it. And they're going to have some left over, and then that'll just go into the operating costs of whatever it is to like have this organization open so that they can get more applicants to give away anyway. But like, I don't know, it's worth a shot.
All right. So what's your video game about?
I have no idea. I don't know how to make a video game at all. I'm just trying to like help support my cousins and like what they want to do.
Is
and
like
they want to make video games.
Console or online or?
I don't know. I have no idea. Like, I'm just like, they have an idea like of like, they're making like models and like they're learning coding, which is beyond me. I don't know anything about coding or like digital 3D art, but yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. It's like whatever that they come up with, and I'm going to try and support them in like what they want to do. And I hope it works out.
I mean, and yeah, whether that specific game gets made or not, I am also coding illiterate. So if you're telling me they're teaching themselves how to code any type of computer, that's impressive to me. Language, man. It's a weird world.
It's also super interesting because none of them finished high school, or even some of them didn't even go to high school or even school at all. And they like learned language through video games. The group of cousins I'm talking about, that's super interesting. I don't know. Like we don't really need, there's importance to school, yes, and education, but I don't know. These people they're just doing it on their own. And I don't know. I'm more inspired by them than like most like artists or like anyone I see. It's because like I grew up with them and they just like literally they just like didn't go to school. They're just like kids playing in the woods. I introduced them to like computers and like some different types of games, and then they just like took off with it. Now they're like all coding geniuses. Oh, I don't know if they're geniuses, but
they're building stuff
way more than what I can understand. Like, I don't know, crazy.
This overarching idea of creativity as an abstract thing is fascinating. It's very human, right? Like, I don't want to speak for any spiritualist, but we seem to be here to build stuff, something, whatever it is. And like at the beginning, when you were saying that you weren't creative with, with X, Y, and Z, we're just looking for a medium that we can put our hands on. And I was, just to be conspiratorial, I was listening to this talk about the American education curriculum, and this one guy brought up how the curriculum is actually defined and controlled by the book publishers. So they cycle through this thing so that they can continue to build textbooks, and has nothing to do anymore with any kind of functional education, any kind of like useful energy, loving learning. They don't do that. And watching my son in grade 1, I keep telling him, I'm like, you know what? Go there to make friends, and like whatever we need to learn on the background, we'll take care of. But yeah, I also don't really trust formal education. It's fascinating when you see anybody in or out of it. When they become creative, it often has nothing to do with trigonometry. Maybe that's not fair. There's probably a lot of smart mathematicians who are very creative that I haven't met yet.
Yeah, I know a photographer who used to be a mathematician. Semi-interesting.
That is cool.
Related. Yeah, and she makes some pretty wild photographs.
Yeah, I was going to ask, does it reflect in her work?
Yeah, I think so. I think it does.
Like, how would you describe, I mean, now we're critiquing somebody, but is it very structural, or is it just how she looks at things? I'm fascinated. I interviewed Eric Donovan, who's an astrophysicist turned photographer. Mathematician would be fascinating.
Yeah. It's very organic. Some of the work that I've seen of theirs, very organic in the form, but it's very like they make large prints on wood that are like huge digital files, and they're like encaustic on there. That's like the process of it. And then the actual image is of the images I've seen are like very organic, but also in a way that's organized. In a way, if that makes sense.
Structured.
Structured. Yeah, organic, but structured, because they are like literally of organic things, because they mostly take photos of like tree stumps and things with like the highest resolution you can, like the like multiple stitches. I don't know. They're interesting. I'm not doing justice talking about them. You can just think about what that might look like. But I don't know.
That's cool. After we're done, you'll have to send me contact information, so I'll reach out to her. Got to interview a mathematician. I will say, before we kind of get to the end of this, the more I learn about math, or I should say, the more I learn about what I didn't learn about math, is it is not memorization. It is much more organic than that. And again, I don't blame my high school teachers or really the system, but it'd be cool if we knew that in some intuitive form when we're really young, and you go to elementary school and somebody's like, look, 2 + 2 is 4, but it's not about just getting 4. Like, this is going to build into a way to look at the universe instead of you got 60, so you should just quit, do something else with your life. But I'm just being bitter. Soloman, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. I don't know when you're going to be by Calgary next, post-COVID, but...
I'm trying to get back to Alberta, because I'm trying to there's a couple of films that I want to make there that require me to be there, like documentary films and documentary photography. So I'm trying to get there soon, getting vaccinated. Hopefully that'll do something. But thanks for having me out. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Awesome. What are you going to do the rest of the day? More work?
I'm going to go shoot some photographs. My friend found some Polaroid Spectra film in their basement, so I want to go pick it up. And I have I found a Spectra camera at some point along. I have tons of garbage cameras that people give me. I'm not sure where I got this one, but I have a Spectra camera that I've never used because I just found it, and I don't know. I'm not trying to look for Spectra film. Not priority for me, but my friend found some in their basement, so I'm gonna go walk over, pick it up, and maybe go photograph some cherry blossoms because they're out in full bloom, and see what it looks like. I don't know. That's my plan for the day.
I'm such a photographer. This is like when I was talking to Louis. It's just everything's about a camera. Well, everything. Probably for your birthday, you probably have a camera-shaped cake, and there's. This sponsored message is brought to you by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider in Alberta. They offer internet, electricity, and natural gas with low rates, awesome service, and profit sharing with local charities. In Alberta, you get to choose who to buy your internet, electricity, and natural gas from. If you choose Park Power, you're choosing a positive local business. Plus, Park Power shares its profits with local not-for-profits that are working to make a difference for their communities. Shopping local is very important to Park Power's owner, Chris Kozowski, and we love local here at the Alberta Podcast Network. It's a great fit. Learn more at parkpower.ca. So, what makes a creator a creator? There are so many avenues to embracing our own creative nature. Personally, I believe all human beings love to make things, whatever form they take, but becoming an artist requires something more than just talent or vision. There's a grind. If I'm learning anything from Soloman, pushing back against the difficulties life presents to us in a constructive way has to be the most creative process of all. Hearing about creating, not only for himself, but for his community, makes me reflect on what it is that motivates me. Am I in a particular stage in my own career? Is photography itself what's actually drawing me in? I think we could all take a moment to reflect on where we started. I suspect that we'll all see this sort of story emerging. One cannot make things if they have not, in the process, had to remake themselves. It is fascinating how focused I have been on final products, prints, or a show, but living through, surviving, and processing the difficulties of getting through life's challenges really is the most creative process of all.
I have a computer, this is my MacBook that I'm using, which I got from school. But I have this computer, I have this thing about building things out of garbage. I built, I think, 3 PCs out of garbage. It cost me $100, or I think $150. But it's a high-end computer. It's better than this MacBook. But I just take, I know a lot of computer nerds, and I take, they're always upgrading, always. So it's also gas, gear acquisition, but for computers. They're always trying to reach this crazy thing of powerful computer within their budget. But then they always throw away parts, and I just gather them. I have boxes of computer parts everywhere. I don't know. I just feel so bad that they're being they're either going to sell them to someone who's going to throw them away, or they just end up becoming garbage. So I just started building PCs out of them. This is my first one, but I built 2 others also, fully working computers that are decent and you can actually game on them, play video games that are modern. That's one of my side things. But all my friends who I play video games with, they all make fun of me because it's also kind of garbage. It takes a long time to turn on, and sometimes blue screens has all these problems because my motherboard, my friend threw this system, it's a nice motherboard. It's i7, whatever, 5 years ago was top of the end consumer. But he bent some of the pins, and I just went in there with a razor blade and bent the pin back and just shoved the component back in, and it sort of works. I'm not it's been working for years, so I'm not complaining. But I just went in there with a razor blade and fixed it because he could not be bothered to it was just garbage to him. So he just fully upgraded his system. But I reused it.
It's fascinating. What I like about that, so holistic, this awareness of waste. I mean, we're talking about taking pictures of people's trash. It's fascinating. Consumerism. Yeah, we'll have to do round 2. Then we could do some big shit about bringing down the man and capitalism and fucking free market this and, the destruction of the earth with all this garbage. But I love the sensitivity. I built a computer for myself when I was, 20. And it ran. It was fine. But when we switched to the Mac cult, it's I just wanted to spend whatever money was, and then I don't want to think about it. I don't want to fiddle.
Awful.
Yeah.
It's awful thinking about that and all the parts and it's a nightmare. But yeah. I like doing it with garbage and
I love that.
It's not my work computer, so I don't really do anything on it except for play video games. Yeah, I don't know. I love it. But it is a nightmare, that whole computer, just computers as a concept is just kind of a nightmare, especially when you use them for work. Because it's I don't know, I try not to update my Adobe softwares because it's I just don't want to deal with bugs and things. And I realize I'm turning into all my friends make fun of me for being old and be an old person because oh, you haven't updated since 2016? And I finally updated because I had I have a Fuji digital camera or whatever, XT3 or something.
And it won't
I couldn't open files. And I was so I finally have to update, and I'm so choked about it, but it's fine.